Hey guys, coming to you with a testimonial for John Bear and his mindset coaching, which has proven to be an amazing asset, as you'll see throughout my testimonial. Please excuse the mess behind me as part of the, you know, pandemic cleanout project of our house. um, the testimonial is going to be a little bit detailed, just because I really want to try and capture the full breadth of things that John brings to the table. I'm sure I'm not going to cover it all, but I'll do my best. Okay. So life happens. Okay. As much as we prepare, train, study, or plan for it, life always happens. Not only that, but it often happens unexpectedly. Now, that's not to say that things can't go as planned. Okay. You apply for that job you want and you get it. You save the money, you buy the house of your dreams. You meet the person you want to spend your life with, they feel the same way. Okay. All these things have a common theme. These are things you consciously planned for. You wanted that job, so you got it. You wanted that house, so you saved for it. You wanted to be with that person, so you ended up with that person. Those kinds of things in life we make our goals for, and we know more or less what we need to do to get it. Yeah, we get confused, we hit road bumps, unexpected things, but we know the goal is still in sight, and we can get back on track more easily. Okay. When I say the unexpected in life, I mean things you literally didn't expect or didn't consciously plan for. An unexpected loss, harassment, getting laid off, which I think a lot of people can relate to now, feeling alone or like no one understands you. These are things that we weren't necessarily taught how to deal with in school or growing up. Or if we were taught, it was very rudimentary. We were taught the correct way to handle things that came up in life, and dealing with it any other way was looked at as crazy or weird, troublesome, attention-seeking, pick your favorite negative, adjective. All the meanwhile, I'm not paying attention to the fact that part of everyone being unique and part of growing up is the fact that everyone handles things in their own way, and there's no one perfect way or perfect mold for every situation. A great example of this is you're taught growing up that, I don't know about you guys, but I was taught growing up that if you were teased, you'd tell a teacher. But what they don't realize is it's not always that simple. Maybe you're afraid to tell a teacher. Okay, maybe you don't like your teacher and you don't feel comfortable around her or him. Maybe you don't have a teacher you're comfortable with. Maybe worst case scenario, maybe the teacher is the problem. You're taught to tell a teacher if you're being teased, but what if the teacher happens to be the one teasing you? They don't realize that also the teacher could just blow you off. Maybe you did complain to the teacher. Maybe you did tell the teacher and nothing got done, so you feel like you're not getting heard. Or maybe they don't realize that there could be retaliation. If Mike, your classmate, makes fun of you, okay, and you tell a teacher on Mike and Mike gets in trouble, it's not going to take Mike too long to figure out what happened, and there could be big problems in the future. They don't really consider that. They just say, come to the teacher, that's the way you solve it, that's the correct way, any other way, not correct. All of this can really make you feel like you have nowhere to turn to or confide in, and then feeling that way can really make you feel stuck and unable to move forward in life. So this is where John comes in, okay? Now, John came into my life when I was a mere young lad at 17, so what was that, about 20 years ago at this point. There was just something about John that drew me to him. At that time, John loved working out and loved taking care of his body from a physical perspective, okay? And I loved eating a box of cinnamon buns every day, so we were definitely not on the same page. And for a while, I could see John getting stronger and stronger every day, and I got a little curious one day, and I hadn't really had much experience with working out, and I went up to him and I said, hey, how can I get as strong as you? Now, I was expecting John to lay me out this elaborate, long answer, hey, come over to my house, tomorrow, and I'll draw you up a plan. And I was expecting him to be like, all right, guys, all right, Joshy, Monday's back and by day, and Tuesday's chest and try day, and Wednesday's leg day, and you're going to do 3 sets of 10 for each exercise. You're going to break for 42 seconds between each set, and blah, 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 blah. Basically, all the things which at the time I thought comprised a good workout. But John had other plans for me. His answer was simple and direct, which is key, as you'll see. Well, and he said, and I quote, well, you can start by not eating a box of cinnamon buns every day. Blew my mind. I understood and didn't understand at the same time. It wasn't until later that John explained to me that one piece of advice was not the end all be all to my question. Him telling me to stop eating cinnamon buns was not going to magically make me stronger, but it was a baby step. And he further explained, because I remember sort of getting that, but not, that he could lay out the best workout program his mind could create, and it could accomplish every strength goal I wanted. If I wanted to bench press 300 pounds, he'll get me there. Okay. But it may not make me stronger, and it wasn't going to do shit if I didn't also change my eating habits. And then he asked me a simple question. What's easier to change right now? My eating or my workouts? Well, since I didn't really have any workouts, that made the answer pretty obvious. I had to change my eating habits. So once I gave up the cinnamon buns and John could see that I was serious, John took the next step, which was to introduce me to working out and strengthening my body. Now, at that point, okay, I could have just been like, it's too much work. I don't feel like dealing with it. I'm just going to stay where I am. And John would have been like, okay, dude, like whatever. And we may or may not have become good friends. But point is, I made the choice like, you know what? I want that. I'm ready to move forward. So as we were working out and I was progressing, we'd bullshit and talk, and we got to know each other and quickly became really good friends. And I noticed that one of the things John did a really good job of was really listening. In other words, I really felt like I was being heard. This is also very key. I'm legally blind. John didn't give a shit about that. John cared that I tried to be a good person, do positive things in life, and he knew that I would never freaking quit, no matter what he told me to do. He knew I wasn't afraid to stick up for myself and say, I don't feel comfortable doing that, but he knew that if I would never not put forth effort. And he understood, hey, you didn't ask to be born legally blind, but let's not let it run your life, okay? And at the same time, he understood that he couldn't just say that and expect it to change overnight, okay? He was always there for me, okay? Anyone tried to start with me or any issues came up, John helped me deal with it from the start, okay? He taught me ways to deal with it when I was younger. And as we grew up throughout the years, life circumstances changed. And so John ended up helping me learn how to cope with things as things evolved. Okay. So back then, we didn't even realize this. John was starting to lay the foundation to help train the body and the mind. We just didn't know it yet. We only knew him as like the body trainer. Okay. So now I've known John for almost 20 years, like I said, and I can honestly say he's the real deal. Okay. Real deal. Working with him has helped me beyond my even wildest imagination. His approaches and methodologies are amazing. John has, throughout all this, John has one simple rule. One rule that every person must follow, no matter the circumstance. Otherwise, he doesn't work with you. You must be willing to put in the work, or he won't help you. You have to be willing to put in the work. John is willing to commit as much effort as you need to help you, but you must be willing to do work yourself. If you need extra help and you're putting in the work, John will never quit on you. John will always put forth as much effort as you need to help you, but you must be willing to do the work yourself. It's not easy by any means. John's going to push you. He's going to push you out of your comfort zone. He's going to push you sometimes to the point where you're frustrated and you want to freaking punch him in the face. But you realize later, hopefully, that he was just pushing you to, your well-being. Your well-being is his number one priority, okay? And don't get me wrong. When I say it's not easy, I don't mean he pushes you all the time. I don't mean it's 100% of push. He just knows when you need to be gentler, like when you need a softer touch, and when you need a kick in the butt, okay? And yes, he's going to ask you to do things that are probably going to push you out of your comfort zone and make you uncomfortable. But that's the whole thing. If it was just easy and, here's my problem, here's my solution, then you wouldn't really need them, and it just wouldn't be beneficial to you. So yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but if you have trust in him, it'll pay dividends in the long run, okay? When you commit to working with John, the most important thing to remember is that unlike other trainers or coaches who just take your money and they have sort of a one-size-fits-all technique, you're bothered by this? Okay, this is what you should do because this is what society says you should do. Or this is the textbook answer to this. So you should do this. Okay, so give me my money for our meeting and we're done. Okay, cool. Come back later and just pour your heart out to me and I'll just tell you what society thinks you should do and blah, blah, blah. That's not John at all. If that's what you want, you're going to the wrong place, okay? He knows it's not an overnight process. He wants you to succeed. You can tell by the end of like the first time meeting him, you'll know that he wants you to succeed. You hopefully will feel that way. It's an ongoing process. He knows that. He knows that there will be times where you make amazing strides, okay? And it feels like everything is working perfectly. Oh, he gave you a solution. You tried it. It worked perfectly. No hiccups. So, you're good. And that happens. He's there to celebrate your milestones with you and help you go further. Okay, cool. You tackled that. That is phenomenal. Let's reflect on this. Let's celebrate the moment. And then let's move on to the next step and let's tackle further. Okay. And he'll help you tackle things that you didn't even realize you wanted to tackle. And there will be times where you feel like you're going nowhere and that nothing is working. And he understands that too. He understands that too, and he's ready to reevaluate and figure out another approach. The bottom line for this part is he doesn't quit, okay? As long as you're putting in the work, John will stay with you as long as you need. John will have you try things, and he wants you to give an honest effort, okay? He doesn't want you to give a half-assed effort. He tells you to do, he advises you to do something. You go, you tried half-heartedly, and you're like, John, it didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? Because you didn't try it, okay? So as long as you give an honest effort. If something doesn't work, no worries. John will work with you to figure out why it didn't work and help you choose a different direction. One of the reasons I love working with John is he is one of the most simplistically complex people I know. That sounds like a very complicated phrase. So what does it mean? It means that John is knowledgeable, insightful, creative, thought-provoking, pick your positive adjective there, okay? But he knows how to break things down into very simple concepts. Because let's face it, at times, our problems can seem very overwhelming. John has a great gift that he can take the issue at hand, break it down, and present it to you the simplest solution. Okay, it doesn't matter what. You can ask him any question when you meet him, or if you already know him, when you're working with him. You give him any issue as an example. He'll break it down. He might have to ask a couple questions, but he can break it down. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that it's important to understand that simplest does not always equal easiest. This was a big key takeaway from working with John, and I will get to that in a little bit. So I spent all this time talking about how great John is and the benefits of working with him, which are important to know. But you might be wondering, well, what is it like? What is the process like working with John? Okay, so I'm going to give it to you from my perspective. And for this example, okay, let's pretend that we're not best friends, me and John, okay? Because you may think like, oh, well, what, I got to get to know him for 20 years or like I got to be his good friend? No, John can help everybody, okay, that's willing to help and put in the work, okay? And you might think, oh, well, he's your friend, so he's going to go easier on you. He doesn't know me, he's going to go tougher. 1,000% wrong. John puts me through the process just like everyone else. Yes, it's true. He knows me well. So he's gotten more of a firsthand perspective on what I go through, but that's just part of being friends for 20 years. But that doesn't mean he sugarcoats it or says what I want to hear. When he deals with me in that context, okay, where I'm working with him, we're not best friends. He is John, I am Josh. That's how it is, okay? It's not best friends. He knows for me, and he learned that from working with me, when to, like I said earlier, when to do a gentler approach. He knows like, okay, if I come on too hard right now, Josh is going to resist and it's not going to go well. So I'll give a gentler approach. And then there are times where he knows where it's like, yo, you need a kick in the butt, dude. Okay. So John is intricately involved in the steps towards your well-being. Okay. He doesn't just say, do this. Okay. As you'll see. Okay. But even though all the steps are intricately interwoven, the steps themselves from like a bird's eye view, pretty simple and straightforward. And I only say that because John loves simplicity. And I only also say that so you understand it's not a very complicated like walkthrough. Okay. So as I talk about the steps, I'm going to go through them. And again, this is from my perspective. Okay, you might meet them and feel that the steps go in a different order, and that's okay. That's another key thing. They're not linear. They're not linear for the most part. There are a couple things that have to happen beforehand, like you have to meet John before he can work with you, but the rest of them pretty much can be intermingled. This is just how I view it as going. Okay, and he doesn't say, okay, I met you, that's step one. Step two is this. Okay, you did this. Okay, now, no, that's not it. I'm just breaking it down for you guys to understand more of like an approach so that you understand what you're walking into. Okay. So first step, you got to meet John. Okay, because if you don't know John, how can you sit there and have him help you if you don't know who he is? And keep in mind also that when you meet John, you're going to have there's going to be different levels of people who know John. So for example, you could have someone like me in my boat who knows him for a long time and just knows that he's good at what he does. And so you just trust him and you just want his help because you know he's good at what he does. Then you have the next group of people who maybe they know him or they've trained with him at his gym. So they've trained in the physical aspect. And so they know he's good at that. And he's telling them that he can add value to their mindset coaching or their mindset. And so they trust him because they've seen the results of what he does with their body. Okay. Then you have the people who just don't know him at all. And that's okay. Maybe you heard about him through word of mouth. Maybe one of the people that knows him recommended you. Maybe you saw an advertisement. Either way, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get the same high quality help from him. Okay. Now, when I met John, I'm not ashamed to admit that shortly into meeting him, I was intimidated. Okay. When I met John, before I even uttered one word to him, I was intimidated. He looked angry. Okay, guys. I mean, 20 years ago, he was a young kid. He looked angry. He looked like someone you just didn't want to mess with. Okay. But assuming you weren't there to be an asshole towards him, after 2 or 3 minutes of talking to him, you realize he's one of the most genuine people to ever meet. I met him 20 years ago, and I'm still amazed by the things he does. And by the way, he does not look like that anymore, so don't worry. He looks like he's just ready to welcome you with open arms, okay? But I challenge anyone to look the same as they did 20 years ago. All right, so now you've met him, okay? So at this point, you're talking to John now because you need help with something. You know what he offers, okay? You may not know all the details, but you know what he does, and you decide that you need help with something. It could be big or small, but it's something that you're struggling with, okay? And no two people are struggling with the exact same thing, okay? Keep that in mind too. He lets you tell your story, okay? Talk about what you're doing. No judgment, just listening to you talk about why you're there. At this point, John wants details, okay? The more complete picture you give John, the better he can help you, okay? Now, I've known John for a long time, so I'm more comfortable with sharing as much details as I can with him because I know him and I trust him, but he understands that not everyone opens up so much right away. So he wants you to share what you're comfortable sharing, okay? At that point, he may not push you out of your comfort zone too much because you're in that getting to know you phase. He just wants you to feel comfortable. That's his primary concern. You need to feel comfortable so that we can help you grow and we can help you heal and we can help you with whatever it is that you're struggling with, okay? The rest, putting in the work, that's going to come later. John's goal here is to make sure you are heard. He wants you to be heard. He wants you to feel important and feel like your problems are important, not just to feel that way so he could be like, see, I made you feel like your problems were important. What good is that? But because they are important. Your mindset is being affected. John realizes that. Having a clear, positive mindset, it's such an important aspect of your life. You can't afford to let it deteriorate, okay? So you share with John, you share what you're comfortable with, okay? Now, tell John what's wrong, that you're stuck. You've given him as much details as you're comfortable with, and he's listened to you, and you feel like you're heard, and now he wants to help, okay? So now it's time to the point where John is now going to get more actively involved with you. So he's going to start asking you questions. Again, no judgment. When you're telling your story, there's no judgment. When he's asking you questions, your answers receive no judgment. If you told him that you got angry because somebody, stole your wallet and then you stabbed 2 people, that's an extreme. But John, no judgment. He might say, wow, I was not expecting that. And then you'll talk about it, but there's no judgment from the actual answer. He simply wants to ask questions to make sure you're on the same page for what you want to work on. That's another key thing. For example, if you're struggling because of getting laid off, okay, John helps you try to figure out that it could be, as in most cases, that you're struggling because you don't get that steady financial security, like you're used to getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever, and you know that that's coming, and so your security is gone, and so you're struggling with that, and so he can help you. But maybe it's something deeper where you actually have always hated your job, okay, and you're struggling because you're like, oh, this is actually a great opportunity or like, shit, I hate my job. And so John can help you realize, like, okay, maybe this is a great opportunity to go into a different field. And so this is where John wants to help you figure out your goals, how to improve your mindset and your life. Okay. So this is one of the most important parts of the process that you'll go through with him. Okay. So now he's met you. Okay. We're moving on to the next step. Okay. He's met you. He's heard all about you. What's troubling you. He's asked questions to help get to the root of the problems. Hopefully by this point, you're a little more comfortable with him, because this is kind of where the hard part comes in. Okay. This is where John's genius comes into work. John will take your problem and simplify things for you. Okay. And to be clear, he's not calling your problem simple. Okay. He's not sitting there being like, oh, come on. No. What he does is he takes all the facts, opinions, thoughts, questions, etc., and he simplifies it to help you understand that we as humans tend to overcomplicate things, and that's why it's hard to figure out how to solve them. Okay. John's there to show you that when you really dissect your problem, it's really not that difficult. It's simple. Okay. Some people, and the reason I say that this is one of the harder parts is because some people can't, they can't realize that. They have trouble comprehending that, yes, it can really be that simple, and that could be their biggest obstacle. And so that's another thing that John will help you understand. So you may realize not right then, but later, you'll be like, oh shit, John nailed it. But you may not see it that way at the moment, and that's okay. John knows this. That's why he's there, to help you realize it, not to tell you to realize it, but to help you realize it. Okay, that's another big thing, and I keep sort of sidestepping here, but John's big thing, and you'll see it, is that he is not, for the most part, okay, he's not just going to give you the answers and send you on your way. Okay, that's what a typical therapist does. It's not him. Okay, John, that's what a typical coach does. John wants you to help yourself come up with the answer. Okay, so he's there as like your mindset guru or mindset Sherpa, if you will. He's a guide. He's there to help you. Okay, now, when he's simplifying things, okay, one important point to keep in mind at this point is that, as I mentioned earlier, simplest does not always equal easiest. John will simplify something for you, and you may immediately think, no, or tell him, no, John, it's not that easy. Okay, it's not that simple. And John will probably tell you something along the lines of, hey, I said simplest. I didn't say easiest. They are not the same thing, and John knows this. He wants you to know it too. Okay, and a different example, okay, than I'm going to give. Let's say you were struggling because you really liked a person, but you were too nervous and afraid to tell them how you feel, and it was really taking a toll on you. You're paralyzed by the fear because you saw this person every day. You had those feelings, and you were just too afraid. The simplest solution, like literally to get from point A to point B, is to literally just tell them how you feel. Hey, Joan, I like you. Okay, I want to be with you, whatever. But is that the easiest solution? Absolutely not. Okay, tons of fear there. Okay, they could reject you, they could laugh at you, they could tell everyone, and they can make fun of you. There's so much fear there. Okay, no one wants that. But this is the thing, the simplest solution is to tell them how you feel. So this is where John comes in to be like, all right, we need to fix your mindset. Okay, or not fix it, but more like, let's get it back to like that positive state. So what can we do to help you either get over the fear or circumvent it, where we could say, okay, like, how do we, okay, you don't want to directly tell them, maybe you do something small for them. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you're uncomfortable telling them, but maybe you're okay with like writing them a note, and I'm skipping ahead to another point, but maybe you're okay with that. So, simplest does not always mean easiest. Keep that in mind. Okay. So now, so listen to you. He's asked you questions. He simplified the problem for you. Okay. Assuming that you are still on board, this is where the hard work. So you put in some work, you put in the hard work. Now this is where the hard work starts to pay off. This is what you've been waiting for. You're about to hit the lottery. This is where John helps you find a solution. Okay. This is where that work, John's genius, comes into play again. Okay. John understands that even though he simplified the problem, that doesn't mean the solution is going to be any easier. Okay. So just because he tells you, to go do something and that's his solution, okay, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight or be easy. In dissecting your problem and simplifying it and helping talk to you, he'll help you realize, like, oh, there might be some smaller underlying issues that you didn't realize that need to be fixed first before we delve into this other problem, okay? And that's okay. As I keep saying, you put in the work, John's there to help you as deep as you need to go, okay? So now, John's helped you develop a solution, okay? You're feeling great. You're like, yeah, you're well equipped. You got your first tool in your mindset toolbox, and you're ready to go tackle it, okay? So you go, and keep in mind that that solution may not need to come up for it may not come up that day. It may take like a week or two, and that's okay. If John advises you or John helps you realize that you should maybe try this, you may not be in a situation where you need to try it, and that's okay. But once you do try it, John then wants to talk to you about how it went, problems, successes, helps you evaluate the process and figure out the next steps, okay? So this is where you come back to John and you guys would talk about how things went. You tell him about how you tried the solution you guys came up with and how it went. But this is another stage where he wants details. So you're not just going to be like, yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it was all right. Nah, it sucked. Like, no, did it work or no? Why do you feel it didn't work? Because you may not feel it worked because there might have been another circumstance which caused you to think that way, but it may have actually worked. It's just that a new problem arose, okay? Do you think it would have worked in a different setting, et cetera, et cetera? He asked you all these questions because he wants to help you figure out things. He just like I said, he doesn't want you to come back and say, yeah, it worked, or nah, I'm good, or this is stupid. What do you really learn from that, okay? At this point, John's trying to help you realize that things build upon one another, and if you don't know why something works, how can you evolve or progress in the future, okay? At this point, you really have put effort into the solution. You really have put in all the work, and it worked out as well or better than you hoped, and you're ready for the next step. Or you really put in the effort and it did not work out as well. That's okay. You need a slightly different direction. Either way, John's there to help you. If it worked, great. After telling John why it worked and talking to him about it, he's ready to help take you to the next steps and getting a clearer mindset. It doesn't just stop there. Okay, great. You tackled problem one. If you live a life with no problems, I want to know your formula and I'll pay you for it, okay? But if it didn't work, that's okay too. As long as you put in the work, John will work with you to come up with a different solution, okay? Or maybe it works part of the time and not others, and John's happy to help give you another tool to use in creating that positive mindset that all of us deserve. We need to nurture our mindset. We need to respect our mindset. We need to help it grow. It's so important that we have a clear mindset and a positive mindset and an ever-evolving mindset, okay? And I know I've said multiple times you got to put in the work, but that, like I said, that is John's like number one rule. And I know I've said that he's there for you, and I keep emphasizing these things, and it's true, okay? So now hopefully you have, and I apologize, I talk a little fast. Now, hopefully you have an idea of what it's like working with John, okay? Now I'm gonna give an example of something I worked on with John, okay? I'm gonna delve in, okay? And I'm voluntarily sharing this, okay? So it has to do with my vision. And I'm not gonna label the steps in a linear order, but don't worry, I cover it all, okay? So the thing that I chose to talk to John about one time was that I was getting harassed on almost a daily basis about my vision, okay? Now, I told him about how it happens when I'm at work. It happens when I'm at pool league. It happens when I'm just out. It happens all the time. It happens when I'm looking close at my phone. People feel the need to say something. I told him about the things that people have said to me specifically and put their hands on me. I've told him about how I've reacted to it, like what I've said. I've told him how much I hate it, that people would make fun of me for that. I've told him I've had thoughts about people punching people in the face, and a few times that I actually followed through with that. I shared how unfair I think it was and how it doesn't make sense why people would stoop so low to make fun of a disability. I've talked about the aftermath of things in the sense of that, okay, so one time someone made fun of my vision, my handicap, and I made fun of the color of their skin. Not my best moment, but in my mind right then it was, well, you want to make fun of something that I can't control, so it's fair game for me to do the same. And I shared with him how I felt about that afterwards, okay? So now John had all this information, okay, listen, no judgment, and he then started to ask me questions. Now, one thing here is, the more you share, the more questions John's going to ask. You might think it's the opposite. You might think, oh, I gave him all this detail, he doesn't need to know. No, the exact opposite. The more you share, the more you'll get out of it. I shared what people said to me and how I reacted, and he asked me how I felt about it. how I felt about the way I reacted right then, how I felt about it a day later or a week later. He asked me why I felt that way. Why, Josh, why do you feel angry about telling someone to piss off when they made fun of your vision? There might be nothing wrong with that. Why do you feel angry about that? Maybe I'm angry unnecessarily. He asked me what was going on when it happened. What was my mood? Did I just get bad news and then I was harassed? Or was I having a great night out with my friends and someone was trying to start trouble? Was it in a work context where I sort of have to figure out a different way to deal with it than if I was just out and could walk away? He asked me if I thought I could have done anything differently. Okay, this was key because this was John really making me start to put the work in. Okay, he was making me actively participate in the process. John just wasn't going to tell me what to do. Okay, if I needed that, I knew better not call him. John is there to help guide me, okay, to help myself. I also realized he's asking questions to help make sure he's helping me with the things I want help on. Okay, so for me, it's, do I really not give a shit what anybody says? And do I just need help in dealing with internally, as in not reacting and not feeling so angry? Or is it that I have no problem with that? I don't let it react. I don't let it ruin my night. But at the same time, do I need help dealing with how to react to people when they say something? Because yes, I might not get affected by it, but that doesn't mean I should have to go through an entire work shift, for example, of listening to people harass me about this for 8 hours. So do I need help dealing with that? Do I need help dealing with both? Maybe I do. Maybe I'm completely stuck and I need to work on things internally and then I can work on things externally. Maybe it's, or maybe it's option 4 is another option is maybe it's some deeper issue. Okay. So John helped me discover that I was lacking confidence because of always being put down about my vision. Now, you're saying confidence, you didn't mention that. You're right. It didn't come up in my conversation. Okay. But this is where John's genius comes in, through asking questions, actively listening, forcing me to do work too. This is where we get to the meat of the problem. And sometimes it's something you don't even realize. And we actually, it's a together process. We can create a roadmap to solve it and create that toolbox, that mindset toolbox. I just made up that term. He may not, but John had heard everything at this point. Okay. He heard my thing. He heard my story. He asked me questions. There was no judgment. Okay. Now he sat across from me and he simply he made it simple. Okay. And the problem with me was I'm letting people control me by letting them piss me off, and I'm reacting the way they want, and I'm letting people take my confidence away, and I have no power. Now, I've known John for a long time, so I remember thinking he was right. Okay. But that's because I knew him for a long time and I trusted him. Now, at this point, that may not be the case for everyone though. Okay. Some people have a lot of trouble comprehending that. Okay. And they, like I said earlier, they may not understand that he's right. So John may have to work a little bit more to help you understand this. Okay. But keep in mind that you just got to trust him. Okay. So now he simplified my problem. Okay. So what's the logical next step? Let's come up with a solution. Okay. All right. I paid my dues. I'm ready to strike gold here. Okay. This is what I've been waiting for. Help me come up with a solution. Okay. This is why I'm here. Help me with a solution. His first solution, okay, and I say first because we had to work on other things, was to try and help me learn to just ignore them. Okay. He asked me, what is easier to control? My reactions or the things other people say? Obviously, the answer is my own reactions. Okay. And again, this comes to simplest does not always mean easiest. Okay. So just because it's the simplest solution to ignore doesn't mean it's the easiest. You get angry. Okay. Just because I don't, I'm ignoring it, but it's hard. Okay. It's hard because I don't understand why people do that. Okay. So, and then this is part of the baby steps. Once I learn to control my own reactions, we can work on how to deal with the things that other people say. So I tried John's solution and it had mixed results. And I remember him asking me why. I told him at the time I told him at times it's easier to ignore than others. I told him at certain times it's easier to ignore people than at other times. That answer didn't fly. He wanted to know more. Okay. You can't just go off that. So I gave him examples of when it worked and when it didn't. Okay, one example of when it worked is I was at Pool League and my opponent kept making fun of my vision the entire match. I remember just being really annoyed at it, but I was thinking just how great would it be if I could just win just to shut her up. And I ended up smoking her in the game and she got real quiet. Okay, but even that solution has its own set of problems, because for example, after the match, you shake each other's hand. I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to acknowledge her, just kept quiet, made the 8-ball. I walked away, sat back down. Okay, then there was the problem of, yes, I was ignoring her, but I was getting angry that her team was allowing her to do that. Okay, so that's another baby step you got to fix. Okay, you can't control that, but how do we solve that so you don't have to deal with it? So her team complained to me about not shaking your hand, and I said, if you want to file a sportsmanship violation, feel free. And when the league manager calls me and asks why, I'll simply tell them that your player was harassing me about my disability, and instead of yelling at her or getting angry or wondering why you didn't want to handle it, I just didn't want to acknowledge her, and no violation was reported. So that's an example of when it worked. Okay, an example of when ignoring didn't work was when I was at my job. Okay, I'm a bartender, or I was pre-COVID. During cleanup time at the bar, there were no customers in there, so the coworkers felt it was fair game for us all to bust each other's balls. Okay, and we all bust each other's balls about a lot of things, but I thought we stayed away from things that like race, sexual orientation or preference, disabilities, things like that you don't really have any control over. Okay, I was wrong. Constantly got made fun of about my vision. I tried to ignore them, but I just couldn't do it because they were relentless. And I said something to my managers, but it was to no avail. So I decided, hey, I actually took it upon myself to take another solution, okay, which is also something John taught me. John's like, hey, don't be afraid to try something. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. The point is that you're trying. You're not just sitting there like a statue and being like, what do I do? I'm powerless. No. I decided to wear headphones while I was cleaning. Now, where it didn't work was I was told by management that I couldn't do that because if they needed me, I wouldn't hear them, even though I said you could just come tap me, but whatever. I told them why I wanted to wear them, and they still said no. So at that point, ignoring didn't work, and because they didn't stop, and I tried another solution, and it didn't work. So I was forced to clean up and listen to the harassment, as well as some managers laughing about it. Okay, so when I told this to John, okay, he immediately was like, that's fucked up. And he understood how that could be absolutely infuriating. Because in both cases, even though I'm not required to be there, it's just bad faith to like walk out on a team, or you can't really always just walk out of work. So it's not the easiest thing to deal with because you're in situations where you can't just leave. So I felt heard, which is, again, a key thing. He also agreed with me that it was fucked up. Then instead of focusing on that I'm getting harassed because of a disability and it's illegal, they instead tried to limit me to how I had to deal with it. So they were like, you have to listen to it. So John tried to come up with a different solution for me, okay? And we worked through this process and I tried different things. This is where John helped me realize that you don't handle every situation the same way. You don't handle things at work the same way you handle things at home or when you're out. The important thing is just to not quit and you keep trying until you find things that work for you. There is something out there that works for you. It may not come about for a little bit. It may not be easy to find at all, but it is there and John will help you find it if you put in the work. The big thing with this step is that John really tried to get into my head about why things didn't work. Each solution was a stepping stone. In this example, I tried ignoring, and in one instance it worked but there was no need for anything. So there was no need for anything further. I ignored. The problem was solved. John just talked to me about it and helped me to remember to do that the next time, and sometimes that's all you need. Ignoring is simple, but it sure ain't easy. It's not easy at all to have to listen to someone repeatedly making fun of my vision. But that doesn't mean ignoring isn't the simplest solution. And hey, in one instance, it worked. So that was one less instance I had to worry about. And in the future, when pool matches came up and I had to play her and I got harassed, I did the same thing. I ignored her and it just worked. But life is rarely that simple, and simply ignoring is not always going to work. In the case of my example during cleanup time at work. So then John says, okay, you figured out how to ignore. Now let's work on the next step. And for when ignoring doesn't work, which you already started to do on your own, but that didn't work. So now we got to figure out another step. Now, in this instance, I came up with a solution on my own. That doesn't mean you have to, okay? If you tried ignoring, if you were in my position and you tried ignoring and it didn't work and you went to John, the fact that you didn't come up with another solution, that's all on your own. That's okay. That's what John's there for. I just happen to have years of friendship with him to understand a little bit about how his mindset works, but don't let that throw you in that John is going to work with you as long as it takes. I'm going to keep saying that. Okay. And in this step, he realizes that one solution isn't going to fix everything. But if you have a toolbox of solutions to help your mindset, you can work towards fixing a lot of things in life, indirectly and directly. Okay. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that, and I sort of spoke on this just now, is that when John's helping you, he realizes that life is constantly evolving. That means what worked once may not work a second time, because just like you learned, so did problems. Problems aren't like static things that they're just there. No, they're evolving. If it doesn't work because of this, then it doesn't work because of that. A great example of this, not work related, is I was out one night. I was sitting at a bar on my phone. I have to look close at it. Okay. And some asshole kept making comments about how close I was looking, and I just ignored him. And so I thought it was just going to go away. And I wasn't even bothered by it. I'm like, man, I'm not, all right. You know it works when you don't have to give it a second thought. He didn't like that I was ignoring him, apparently. And he came up and he literally took the phone out of my hand. And I remember looking up and being like, hey, what the hell? And he literally pulled me out of my bar seat. And I stumbled a little bit. And once I was on my feet, I proceeded to punch him in the face. Maybe not the best reaction, but at the time I didn't care. He obviously ended up in a worse condition than I did. And I remember telling John about this. And I said to him, fuck, man, I tried to ignore it. It didn't fucking work. He fucking put his hands on me. And I was really angry. Apologize for the cursing. I was really angry. And John said, that sucks. And he said, one solution isn't going to work every time. Sometimes ignoring isn't enough. So that's why it's important to have multiple ways of dealing with things. And to be clear, in that example, he wasn't condoning violence, okay? But he did say, hey, sometimes if someone puts their hands on you in a threatening way, you have to react, okay? That's another thing. Another key takeaway from this was that made me realize that there's going to be hurdles throughout the process. Yes, that seems obvious, but you may not realize that, okay? When you get that first solution from John, when you get a solution, you got to realize, like, it's not going to work 100% of the time, okay? Unless you literally only have one problem, like every Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning, you're stuck for this. Okay, we fixed that. You're good. But like for most people, one solution isn't going to work 100% of the time. What John did, okay, was try and help prepare me so that when obstacles did come up, I had the right mindset and tools to handle them. And that is definitely not an overnight process. Okay, so I'm wrapping up here. As you can see, the process is involved, intimate, and sometimes can just feel overwhelming. But if you're willing to put in the work, John will help you. And he will never ask you to do something that he wouldn't or hasn't done himself. That's the other thing. Okay, so he's not just going to give you untested ideas. Okay, and he will always be honest with you. Okay, he will never lie to you to make you feel better. Okay, so trust me, do the work now and have it pay off later. If you have a problem, don't just keep pushing the problem around or avoiding it or solving it with another problem. Tackle that sucker head on. Let John help you. And I promise you, you will not only survive, you will thrive.